Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we talk about all things good and the pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Rafe, and it's going to be a great show again this week because you know why?
Because it's another part of Shackleton.
It's another part of Shackleton, and we're the ones who get to decide whether it's a great show. So it's going to be a great show. So with me, as is often the case these days, is Harry. Harry, how are you?
Rafe, I'm doing well. I'm excited for particularly this episode of Shackleton's journey, sans icebergs, sans ice flows.
Yes, we were going to get off of the ice. We left our friends as they just got into the boats last time, and what do they say? Out of the frying pan into the fire. Maybe this should be a quote: "Off of the ice into the boats." It's not spoiler. It's not better, but it's closer to their eventual goal, which is back to civilization. For those of you regular listeners, thank you for being here. We appreciate that. We appreciate new listeners too. Thank you very much. If you need to contact us, send us a little email at bufnagle@bufnagle.com and tell your friends to listen, and you will get a free episode. Hit the like button, hit that smiley star, hit the I would like a free banana split button, whatever you got, those little buttons on the podcast machine, hit those. But, share the love, share the buff, tell your friends to listen, and it's good for you, it's good for them, it's good for us. It's a win-win-win, as they say. And Ernest Shackleton and his men have just gotten into the boats. They have been on an ice floe for 15 months, 14 months, well over a year. And now they are taking matters into their own hands, and they are going to sail to the islands that are to the north and west of where they are. They, Harry, they got off the floe into the boats, and they started rowing, and they're working their way through the ice pack. And things are kind of nasty there because this where they are is where the Weddell Sea hits the Drake Passage, and it's nasty currents and winds and stuff. And they are in three small boats. Okay, they are in the Dudley Docker, which is a 21-foot 9-inch boat. The Stancomb Wills, which is also about 21 feet 9 inches, and then there's the James Caird, which is at 22.6. These boats are about 6 feet wide. They got 3 seats in them. They hold 9, 8, and 11 men, respectively. That gives you 28. And our friend Earnest Shackleton is in the James Caird, which holds 11. But the Wills is not quite as good as the other boats, so they end up dragging it a lot behind the other guys. The Caird it does very well, but the Docker is kind of in between. So they're not all equal, which is kind of hard when you're trying to stay together. But they're in there and they're rowing, and they have modified these boats when they're on the ice floe to make them a little bit more seaworthy. They have raised the sides, which makes it a little bit more difficult to row.
Yeah, can you imagine if you've been in a rowboat or maybe like one of those little swan paddle boats with your spouse, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to reach over to the edges and touch the water, but this wasn't the case for these boats. They had to sit inside of the boats with almost like rails next to them, and then put the oars over the rails and try to row down to the sea. And it's just not easy.
Well, and it wasn't how the boat was designed, right? It was designed for other purposes. And McNeese, I think, is the guy's name, who was the carpenter on the expedition, and he has been modifying this boat since they pulled him off the Endurance and dragged him halfway across the Weddell Sea. He's been adding stuff to the side and caulking them up so they are more seaworthy, because you want high sides on them so they can handle bigger waves. But right. These are pretty small boats to be out in the open ocean, but they are. That's where they are. So they row the rest of the afternoon. 5 p.m. the lights are fading, and they decide, hey, I got an idea. We'll spend the night. We'll just pull up to one of these small little floes or icebergs, and we'll camp here on the floe, and that'll be all right for our first day. We made some progress, so that'll be great.
Well, yeah, and they've got to be exhausted, right? It's written that the first few minutes were crucial as they move away from Patience Camp. where they were staying in that initial ice flow. And the ice somehow opens up in front of them. They get out more towards open sea. And like you said, they eventually decide, we're exhausted. We're going to camp on this other ice flow, just like we've been doing, and all things are going to be great. We can just keep doing this over and over again, and we will eventually reach our destination.
Yeah, so they get out of the boats and they tie them up on the side and they make some dinner and they set up the camp, set up the tents and stuff. And about 11 o'clock, Shackleton is up wandering around. And what do you do if you're a leader? What do they say?
You do all your checks on your men.
Yeah, checks on your men. It's 11 o'clock. He's up and about walking around, and the flow just cracks right down the middle. And Shackleton almost falls in, but it cracks right underneath a tent filled with 8 men. So there's a big tent. The crack opens up right underneath the tent. This is like in the movies with the earthquake, right, Harry? You're standing there and the crack goes right between your feet and you fall in, right? And
right.
I'm sure it's a TV show like that. It happens to these guys. There are 8 men in this thing. And one guy actually falls into the crack, into the ocean,
yep,
in his sleeping bag, inside the tent. I mean, this is so he's drowning there, and Shackleton reaches in, rips him out of there. And then, of course, because this is moving ice, he pulls him out, and it comes crashing back together. So you can't afford to, it's one thing to say, okay, I'm going to camp on the ice. A second thing is, well, I'm going to camp on the ice, but I might fall in, but I'll get back out. But if you don't get back out, not only will you probably freeze, you may be crushed before you freeze. And fortunately, Ernest was there to grab him and pull him out.
Yeah, and this is the same type of ice that crushed the Endurance.
Yeah, these are.
Yeah, good luck.
And they are in the middle of an ice, like a pack of ice flows. All right, so there's a little bit of water around them, but this is not a good place to be. The crack continues moving around. They can pick up the tent. They get it. This poor guy who was this guy? This was
Ernie Holness.
Ernie Holness. Yeah, Holness.
Holness.
Yeah, so he's soaked, okay? And it is nighttime, right? It's 11 p.m. It's pitch black. And they're trying to, what do you do now? Because he's covered in frozen water. And Shackleton's like, well, I don't have any dry clothes for you. So until you dry off, I would like you to keep walking around this little ice flow. And you other guys take turns walking him, because we have to keep him moving. Otherwise he'll freeze. And we have to keep him upright so his clothes kind of dry out.
Yeah.
After living on the ice flow for a year, right? This is...
Yeah, and eventually he turns out okay. He keeps walking. But do you remember the one thing that he was most upset about?
No, tell me.
He wasn't upset that he was cold or wet or that his clothes were ruined or his sleeping bag was lost. No. He grumbled for hours over the fact that he had lost his tobacco in the water.
Yeah, he was like, shoot, I lost my
like
tobacco.
Any good seaman, he lost his tobacco.
Well, that was the thing. One thing, remember, he said one thing you can take with you is a pound of tobacco. That was a staple for that journey, because, without a lot of, there were no other pleasures. There were none. And, I'm not a smoker, but, if you like to do that, hey, that's a thing. And it certainly was a thing then, back in 1916. So he lost his tobacco. He's frozen. He's walking around the ice, and Shackleton's, picking things up. And all of a sudden the ice cracks again. Right? And Shackleton gets stuck, and they're tossing stuff across, and Shackleton is stuck on the other side, and he drifts away in the darkness. And they're all, it was kind of a funny scene. They're all kind of standing there thinking, what do we do? And finally they hear this voice out of the darkness says, launch a boat.
She said, hey guys, come and get me. I'm just over here.
So they get the boat, and he says, I'm over here. And they row toward him, and they get to the other side where he is, and he jumps in, and they row back in the dark, in the Weddell Sea, where it's really cold. I did that the other night. I was going to bed, and I was walking through the house after I shut the lights off, and I'm thinking, it's warm in here. I know where everything is. It's a controlled environment. The worst thing I can do is stub my toe on a dresser or something like that. I cannot imagine trying to rescue somebody in the darkness as much as I read this, I still can't get in my head what it was like for these guys. I still can't. I mean, I can say the words. I can't get the feeling. It was 50 some degrees the other day, and it was windy, and I was thinking I was cold, and then I just giggled.
Let me just put on a jacket real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not soaked to the bone, trying to do all this at the same time.
Yeah, so it was so so they get through the night, all right, and they kind of make the decision we're not doing that again. But on April 10th, they wake up to east winds and intermittent snow, right? And they figure they got 30 to 40 miles to go to reach these islands. They launch about 8 o'clock after having a little bit of breakfast. They're able to get to open water, Harry, and they're able to hoist the sails, and everything's going great. And then the winds pick up, and they get a very choppy sea and very high winds from the northeast, and it is really cold because where are they? They're on the Weddell
Well,
Sea.
yeah, exactly.
All right, so they find a kind of a nice flow berg kind of thing, and they think we're going to get on the windward side is the side that the wind hits, right, and the leeward side is the side that
Yes.
the wind is, right. So they go to the leeward side of the berg, and they kind of set up camp. They don't go on the berg. They kind of tie up to the berg to get some respite from the wind, and they get a little bit of rest there. But then they pull the boats up onto the iceberg and just kind of wait it out. One of the guys falls into the water while they're trying to pull the boats up onto the berg. They are soaked because the wind is blowing so hard and blowing the water, and they try to get some sleep. The next morning, the ice is all around them. There are gale force winds from the northeast. The berg is being tossed, Harry, on 30-foot rolling waves. 30 feet.
It's gigantic.
30 feet. Okay, so just, and I always had to put this in perspective. I was like, well, it's only 30 feet. That's a 10-meter diving board.
Yes.
Right? That's taller than your house. A story of a house is about 10 feet.
Well, that's moving the chains for first down.
That's moving, except for you don't move the chains vertically. Yep. Right. So every time the wave comes through, they go up and down. I mean, it's just, and because they're going up and down, these ice pieces, these chunks are crashing against each other. And this flow that they're on is being broken apart and crumbling beneath them.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're on a flow. They're being tossed around by these. They're struggling to not fall off this thing. They have the only safe place is in a boat,
right?
Which is not very safe. They should have said, "This just isn't safe. You can't go there. It's not safe." Right? So they keep looking.
Sorry, Mom. I'm going to go anyway.
It's and because of the winds, okay, and it's an ice pack, but it's not locked up. So these pieces are coming into them and moving past them. So the ice kind of moves around them, but they're looking for an open space to launch the boats into. And they see open globs of water move past them, but it never gets around to where they are. And finally, about 2:00 that afternoon, with about 3 hours of light left, a pocket opens up, and they launch the boats into these swells. And they figure, well, we gotta get moving. We gotta get moving.
And one thing I want to mention is the words from Alfred Tennyson's Morte d'Arthur from Macklin, as all of the men are sitting on this float right before they leave at 2 p.m. is, "I never saw nor shall see, here or elsewhere, till I die, not though I live 3 lives of mortal men, so great a miracle." So they are still astounded at what they're living in.
Yeah, and how good their fortune is.
Right, because they're not stuck at patient's camp anymore.
Yeah, so it is they cannot believe what they're seeing, and then in the end, they can't believe their good fortune here with the sea opening up for them. But now they have a new plan. Okay, so until now, this is in the book. Until now, the destination had been either Clarence or Elephant Island, whichever the party happened to strike. These were the most logical choices, the closest bits of land. At the time the boats were launched from Patient's Camp, Clarence Island lay just 39 miles almost due north. By sailing northwest, they had reduced that distance to about 25 miles north-northeast, according to Worsley's estimates. However, it had been 2 days since that last observation, and during that time, strong winds out of the northeast had probably blown the party a considerable distance to the west. Furthermore, the greatest quantities of open water now extended to the southwest toward King George Island, roughly 80 miles away. Shackleton made the decision on the spot. They would abandon the effort to reach Clarence or Elephant Island and take advantage of the following wind to make for King George Island. So they're going to go with the wind to the west, to the west and south, to the southwest, toward King George Island, which is 80 miles away, instead of trying to tack against it or row sideways against the wind toward Clarence or Elephant Island. So there you go. There's a new decision. That's what a leader does. So they have a little supper along that berg. The ice, the wind kind of drops, and things are a little bit better. They start rowing with in the dark. It's snowing. It is cold. They have to keep moving to stay warm. Like they would take turns in the boats, Harry, rowing. It's like, okay, I can row for a while. And then they were like, if you weren't rowing, you were cold.
Freezing cold.
You were freezing, right? And so they row all night long, carefully rowing through the water, trying to avoid hitting icebergs. And every now and then they'd hear whales surface, especially killer whales, who had been known to like knock over icebergs as they surface. And they're rowing through these things, and all they can do is hear them.
That's like, it's like the ultimate like video game level. Like, hey, try to reach the final boss, but you're going to be stuck on a little dinghy going through the icebergs, and there's whales throwing icebergs at you.
Right. And you can't see them.
Right.
You have no idea where they are, and you have no idea where they are, and you have no idea where you are.
Yes.
All you know is that you're in the boat with these other guys, and you can hear them around. It's pitch black. It's nighttime. All right. So they do this all night long. They row. Right. And on the so that was the night of April 11th to April 12th. At 5 a.m., the light comes up. They have a little breakfast alongside a berg, and they're like, oh, the sun has come up. Let's take a reading. So they take a reading.
As one should.
Yes, and they are now 124 miles east of King George Island, 61 miles southeast of Clarence Island. They are 22 miles farther away than they were 3 days ago when they were on Patience Camp.
Yes.
They have actually gone
3 steps forward and 18 steps back.
18 steps back. They have gone backwards 20 miles into the wind. So the wind has been blowing, like if they could just get off the water, they could go to the wind, with the wind toward King George Island. But the current is so strong the other way that they've actually gone backwards into the wind. So Shackleton, of course, at this point, he's very good at this. It's like, well, time for a new plan.
Let's go somewhere else.
All right. So to reach King George Island now would mean sailing directly into the current. So for the third time, Shackleton announced that the destination had been changed. This time it became Hope Bay, about 130 miles away at the tip of Palmer Peninsula, beyond Joinville Island. The boats were set on a southerly course, and the men sat in almost absolute silence, tired, through, and discouraged, their hopes of an early landing completely shattered. That's how they're looking. April 12th. They've gotten in there. They've been a couple days on the water, and now they're actually going away from the places they're trying to get to. And every time they try to go somewhere, they get blown away. This is Sisyphean?
Sure.
Imagine this, Harry. You've been in those. I'm sure you've been in situations like that. I mean, not like this, okay? But you've been in situations where the plan changes and you can't seem to catch a break, and everybody says, "What's the plan now?" And then you make up and you try to.
And you're trying to correct the course such that you are helping out everybody involved as the leader.
Right.
And no matter your decision, you just can't seem to make headway.
And it's not like you're doing it, and it's not like it's the wrong decision.
No.
It's the right decision at the time.
With all the right information.
Given the information that you have. And there's no way to get more information. There's no way, we should have known. So they set off toward what was it called?
Homer Peninsula?
Homer Island, home by the bay, whatever it was called. It was
Hope Bay.
Hope Bay. So they set off for Hope Bay.
Rafe, I just downed a flavored water here, but I'm really craving something else.
What could that be, Harry?
I am craving a really good, hearty, delicious smoothie.
A smoothie? Well, you know what you need, Harry? If you want a smoothie, you need a Blend Jet 2. Blend Jet 2 is a portable blender, so you can blend up a smoothie at work, a protein shake at the gym, or even a margarita on the beach. It's small enough to fit in a cup holder, but powerful enough to blast through tough ingredients like ice and frozen fruit with ease. Blend Jet 2 is whisper quiet, so you can make your morning smoothie without waking up Jamie and the kids, the whole house.
Yep.
Right? And it lasts for 15 plus blends and recharges itself quickly via the USB-C. And best of all, BlendJet 2 cleans itself. Just blend water with a drop of soap and you are good to go.
Excellent.
It comes in all sorts of colors and patterns, and if you want it, Harry, you can get it. It is a certifiably great blender.
Excellent. And you know what? For all the other listeners out there, what are you waiting for? Go to blendjet.com and grab yours today. And be sure to use the promo code Bufnagle to get 12% off your order and free 2-day shipping. No other portable blender on the market comes close to the quality, power, and innovation of the BlendJet 2. They guarantee you'll love it or your money back. Blend anytime, anywhere with the BlendJet 2 portable blender. Go to blendjet.com and use the code Bufnagle to get 12% off your order and free 2-day shipping. Just click on the link in the description for the podcast and shop today and get the best deal ever.
Now that evening they tie up to a floe and they hook the boats together. No more, we're not camping on any more floes. We're going to hook the boats together. We're going to tie them together. And then about 9:00 that night, the wind shifts. All right, they were going to go with the wind toward Hope Bay, and nope. Now the wind shifts around, pushes the other way. They have to get themselves away from that berg because now they're being pushed up against the berg, and they're going to break the boats. It is snowing. It is wet, thick, heavy snow. Remember, Harry, I'll repeat this. It's now nighttime. It's dark, cold. And it's cold, and they are wet. Okay, so this is the second night in a row with no sleep, only rowing. Okay, it is 4 degrees below zero. Their clothing freezes stiff. I don't know if you've ever had that. You put something out on the clothesline and it's cold and it freezes. They're wearing frozen clothes. They're wearing frozen clothes.
They can't get any more frozen.
How much worse could it be? Oh, let me count the ways. All right, so how bad is it? The clothes the men wore, now that they were sitting almost motionless, froze stiff. Not only were their garments wet from the spray and the snow, they were also worn and saturated with the oil secreted from the men's bodies during the 6 months of constant wear. If a man shifted his position even slightly, his skin came in contact with a new, unwarmed surface of his clothing. Everyone tried to sit still, but it could not be done. The weariness, the lack of food, the exertion, and the worry had weakened them, so that the harder they tried to sit still, the more they shivered, and their own shivering kept them awake. It was better to row. Shackleton in the Caird doubted that some men would survive that night. This was starting to look really bad now. This is bad.
It's grim.
It is.
Very
this is a grim fairy tale. They make it through that night. The morning of April 13th arrives, and the wind changes.
Surprise.
Yeah, that's never happened before. It's now from the southeast, and they have, guess what, Harry?
Gone in the wrong direction.
Yeah, they have a new plan. Shortly after sunrise, the wind swung around to the southeast and freshened considerably. Shackleton called to Worsley to bring the docker alongside the Caird. After a hurried conference, they announced that for the 4th time, the destination was changed. In view of the southeast wind, they would run for Elephant Island once more, now 100 miles to the northwest, and they would pray to God that the wind held fair till they arrived.
Yes, see, at one time was like less than 50 miles, but now that it's 100 miles away, they've got a better shot.
But you have, and we don't, I think we take for granted all these things. You were like, oh, look at the map. I'll try to find the best. And it's kind of, maybe it's like being in a traffic jam or like trying to get out of the parking lot after the ball game. I'm going to go this way because that line's shorter. Oops, now I'm going to go this way. But those are things that it's going to dissipate. It's going to be, the only thing I can think of, like when I was in Raleigh, Harry, you were in Raleigh. You were at school that day. We had a freak snowstorm came through. Do you remember this?
I do remember.
It came through the Triangle area, which is the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area, and dumped about a 1/4 inch of snow very rapidly in that area, probably over the course of 45 minutes. A 1/4 inch of snow dropped. And as the forecast got announced, all the businesses let people go home. So immediately as the snow started falling, all the cars went out on the road. And it was 28 degrees and it had been cold for a while. And all these cars immediately turned that 1/4 inch of snow into a sheet of ice everywhere. And all the roads were just stopped. Everybody stopped everywhere. And it took me, my normal 25-minute drive home was like 2.5 hours People were running out of gas everywhere. Didn't you have
I was
you were
I
on a
was
school
initially
bus?
stuck. I was stuck on a school bus from 12 o'clock to about 7 p.m. And for some reason, I got off of the bus because I had a friend of a friend's dad pick some of us up in the neighborhood and drop us off.
Yeah, didn't he just came up next to the bus and said, "Hey, I'm so
I'm
and
picking
so."
up these kids.
Yeah, and everybody trusted him, right? I mean, there was
Yeah.
no kids got stolen, okay? But I remember everybody would try to find a different route here or there. And the cell phone lines were down. There was no. But imagine doing that when you have no external information, absolutely none.
You mean to tell me they didn't have a phone or GPS with them?
What do they say in Gilligan's Island? No phone, no lights, no motor cars, not a single luxury. They had nothing. They had nothing. And half the time when they're trying to do this, it's dark.
Right.
And the other half of and all the time they're in the water and they have to row. So they're going to go back to Elephant Island now. So they're able to conjure up some little stoves. They make some heated milk in the boats, and Shackleton says, "Eat whatever you want. No more provision restrictions. We're going for all of this." Ice starts forming on the canvas. They put some canvas over the boats to keep the snow out, and the rain falls on it and turns to ice, and things get frozen everywhere. But about noon on that day, they get a break from the flow, and they get a strong wind, and they get to the open sea. This change was breathtaking. The northwest swell, which had been cushioned by the pack, now advanced upon the boats in undisguised immensity. Their course lay directly into it, and within minutes they were struggling up a hill of water whose face was a quarter-mile long. At its summit, the wind shrieked, blowing the spray into thin, feathery lines. Then they started down, a slow but steep descent into the valley leading to the next swell. Over and over again, the cycle was repeated. Before long, the pack ice was lost from sight, and occasionally one or another of the boats would disappear behind one of the enormous rolling hills of water. It was as if they had suddenly emerged into infinity. They had an ocean to themselves, a desolate, hostile vastness. Shackleton thought of the lines of Coleridge: alone, alone, all alone, alone on a wide, wide sea. 3 little boats, packed with odd remnants of what had once been a proud expedition, bearing 28 suffering men in one final, almost ludicrous bid for survival. But this time there was no turning back, and they all knew it. And here's an example of what I thought was just fantastic prose.
Mm-hmm.
This is so easy to read. It just enriches you as you go through. I just love this book, Harry. This is a great thing. So anyway, they keep rowing, and it is
well, and it gets worse. They keep rowing, and they go through the night.
Yep, and the winds increase, and the temp goes down. Everything gets wet, and everything gets frozen.
And they decided to wait. They decided to wait it out at night, right? They grouped up together.
Yep.
One of the boats was weaker than the others. They laid anchor, as far as I remember.
Yeah, they put an ocean anchor out. Yes,
they put an ocean anchor out, and then they waited for morning
because they wanted to see, because they wanted to make sure they could see where they were going, right? And that was a it's kind of hard to find. You don't want to sail past the island at night, right? On the Caird, they managed to make enough room for 4 men to huddle together at one time in the pile of sleeping bags in the bow, and they took turns trying in vain to sleep. On the Docker, however, there was only room enough for the men to sit upright, huddled together with their feet squeezed between the cases of stores. The seas that came on board, the water that came into the boats, right, ran down into the bottom of the boat. And since most of the men were wearing felt boots, their feet were soaked all night in icy water. They did what they could to keep the boat baled dry, but the water sometimes rose ankle deep. To keep their feet from freezing, they worked their toes continually inside their boots. They could only hope that the pain in their feet would continue, because comfort, much as they yearned for it, would mean that they were freezing. After a time, it took extreme concentration for them to keep wiggling their toes. It would have been terribly easy to just stop. It's cold. It's terrible. Throughout the night, the men were troubled by the need to urinate frequently. Certainly, the intense cold was a factor in this condition, and the 2 physicians believed it was aggravated by the fact that they were continually wet, so they absorbed water through their skin. Whatever the reason, it required a man to leave the slight comfort of the sheltering canvas and make his way to the lee side of the boat several times during the night. Most of the men also had diarrhea from their diet of uncooked pemmican, and they would suddenly have to rush for the side and, holding fast to a shroud, sit on the frozen gunwale. Invariably, this icy sea wet them from beneath. I mean, that's something we forget about. There's like natural stuff you have to deal with.
It's not like it goes away.
You still got to do that. You still got to do that, and that's a thing. There's you get to know your buddies pretty well, I guess. Terrible time. Ice formed on everything. It made everything heavy. And you know what, Harry? When they got off that ice pack a couple days ago, they forgot to bring ice with them into the boats.
So they're completely dehydrated.
They are out of water. The storm calms between 3 and 5 a.m. On the morning of April 14th, they realized they are 30 miles from Clarence Island, 30 miles from Elephant Island, but the men were failing. They were frostbite. They had saltwater boils. Apparently somebody can attest to this, but apparently too much salt water on you, your skin gets rashing and gets boils on it, like blisters.
Hasn't happened to me.
Right. And some of these blisters, and they're rowing all the time, right? So they're getting blisters everywhere on their hands.
Oh, and frostbite.
And then the fluid in the blister freezes
and bursts.
No, you just have rocks of ice underneath your skin.
It sounds comfortable.
Yeah. All right. So the ships at this point, everything's covered in ice. They have to de-ice these things. Holness loses 2 of his teeth. He's trying to untie the sea anchor that they had put out that you mentioned, Harry, and the swell of the sea comes up and smashes his face against the ship. He loses 2 of his teeth. The oars are covered in ice. They lose one. It just slips away, falls into the ocean, and sails away. So they finally get rowing. They row and sail. And by 1:30 that afternoon, they're 15 miles away. They have now been 80 hours without sleep. By 2 p.m., they're 10 miles away, but by 3 p.m., they're no closer. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they keep rowing. The winds increase. Worley says, you know what? We should. There's no sense keeping the 3 of us together. All right, the Wills is being towed by the Caird. The Docker with Worsley in it, they're going to go separate ways. All right, so they start going. They're trying to. All they have are matches to check their little compass that they have with them in the boat. Docker gets separated by 3, and they keep going all night, Harry. All night now at this time. All right, the men are failing. They're falling asleep. They can't function. They've been 5.5 days in the boat. It is dark. They have no idea where Elephant Island is, and dawn inches its way in at 48 hours with no liquid, and the light finally reveals that Elephant Island is less than a mile away. They see the looming cliffs. This is an island with huge cliffs of rock and just glaciers and rocks, but it's a thing.
It is not ice and it is not water,
and you can stand on it. And then they hit. We talked, Harry. I don't know if you were on this episode. Maybe it was with Zach. With Magellan, when he went through the Strait of Magellan, they get hit with a williwaws, which are these gigantic cold downbursts of air that come off of these cliffs. So the Docker gets hit by one of these williwaws. All right, now keep in mind, take this with you, okay? Next time you're out at a party, you say, you listen to the Buff because I learned about williwaws.
Yeah, well, yeah, right? That's what I do.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. So I see your wife swooning in the background.
That's right.
Harry knows of williwaws. All right, so the Docker is now near the island. There are chunks of ice floating in the water, and the guys are like, "Oh, that's ice." And since it's floating there, it's not seawater. The ice is fresh water. Yep. So they start grabbing these little pieces of ice, and they're slaking their thirst with that. Meanwhile, on the Caird, dragging the Willis, they are knee deep in water. I remember there's 11 men in the Caird. And they in the night pass the ship. The ship passes the island to the northeast, and then they find a beach up on the north side of the island, just over the top. And about 9:30, the Docker happens to wander into the same bay where the Caird is, and they both realize that's the beach we're going for. They take the Wills toward the beach because it had a lower, what's it called, a draft. How far it sits in the water. It doesn't sit as low in the water, right? Okay. So they take the Wills in there. They get to the beach. Rickinson, one of the guys in the Wills, gets out of the boat and collapses from a heart attack. Greenstreet's feet are completely frostbitten, and Blackborough, remember the guy who stowed away when they landed at wherever they landed?
Yep.
He has no feeling in his feet. His feet are gone. I mean, they're shot. But eventually, all the men get to the beach. The beach, 100 feet wide, 50 feet deep, and they are, for the first time in 497 days, they are finally on land. Gravel, surrounded by seals, penguins, and other waterfowl, and they are finally on land. And they made it to Elephant Island.
The land doesn't move. The land doesn't get beaten to shred by ice floes crashing into each other. The land doesn't flood the boats. That's great.
What a great place to be.
It's wonderful.
Who
and
wouldn't
now
want to
all
go
you
there?
have to worry about is
Everything else.
everything.
So they spend the night on the island. They recognize that the island has evidence of being the island. The beach there has evidence of being hit pretty hard by some high tides. So they realize the next morning, after getting a couple seals and eating seal steak all day long, they realize, you know what, we're gonna have to move this camp. So they get back in the boats and they move down the island a little bit. They find another beach, and they're going to spend a couple days on that beach before Shackleton and 5 of the men are going to make a run for South Georgia Island and civilization and send back help. And we will take that up next time.
Absolutely. And that's things don't get easier. For the men on Elephant Island, they kind of sit. For Shackleton and his crew, it is one last ditch effort again.
Through another circle of hell.
That's right.
It is so that is coming up. There's more adventure for Ernest and his men, and get the book, read the book. There will be a test next week on endurance by Alfred Lansing. This is a great book. It's a great story, and every day, thank God for the clothes you have, the shoes on your feet, and
for listening to the Buff.
And for be thankful for the Buff. All right. As always, seek the good, be the good, and spread the good, and enjoy the adventure of life.